Hey, I got a confession.
Welcome back to the Indie Author Method, where we share insights from authors for you on your writing journey. On the weekends, when you have more time and space in your day, we sit down with another author to discuss their processes and what they can share with you. This episode is brought to you by Monk Manual. Monk Manual, at its core, is a 90-day productivity system, but it's much more than that. Monk Manual as a company is on a mission to fix modern productivity and help people live fuller lives. Inspired by the wisdom of monks and rooted in psychology, they design practical tools for peaceful being and purposeful doing. They were so gracious to partner with the Indie Author Method, and you can check out their products, including the 90-day planner that I personally use, at their website, monkmanual.com. Be sure to use promo code Andrew J. Brandt at checkout for 15% off your order. That's my name, promo code, all one word, Andrew J. Brandt at monkmanual.com. Now on to the interview. Today, I'm so excited. I get to be joined by Aileen Erin, the author of multiple series, including the incredibly popular Alpha Girls series. Her newest book, Invocation, book one of a brand new series. It releases spring in 2024 and is available for pre-order now. Aileen, we met almost a year ago at Lubbock Book Festival, and I've been trying to get you on the show for a while. How are you?
I'm doing well, thank you. I'm excited to finally be here.
Yes, I'm so excited to finally get you on. Like I said, we met at the Lubbock Book Festival, back in October of last year. I think it was right before my book was coming out. I was doing some promo for it. You had a new book out at the time, and now you're starting this new series. So let's get into it. Let's talk about the Alpha Girls series first. What that series just finished up, correct?
It finished up a little bit ago, but yeah,
Gotcha.
it's kind of my most popular one, and the new book that's coming out, Invocation, is a spin-off from it. Takes one of the characters and does its own thing. So yeah, it's good. It's exciting. I like it.
I'm always really jealous of writers who can write, 6 or 7 books in a series. To be able to expand your imagination like that is pretty incredible. I simply don't have the imagination for it.
That's not true. I don't believe that.
What inspires you to write? What inspired the Alpha Girls series? How did that dovetail into Invocation? How did you come up with the idea for this?
So I wrote the first Alpha Girl novel in as part of my thesis project for my MFA, writing popular fiction. And I actually showed up. I didn't realize that I needed to have a book idea to go ahead and write. So and I found out that I was going to have this meeting with a mentor who's a published author, and I had to have something ready.
Okay.
So suddenly I was forced to come up with the first idea that I could come up with. And I grew up watching Buffy and loving anything vampires, paranormal, werewolves. I loved all of that stuff. So I was like, what if I was going to do something differently? What rules would I change? And how would I play with that? What would I put into it? And so then that became the Alpha Girl series. I rewrote that book, the first book in it, Becoming Alpha, maybe 10 times in the course of my MFA, because I was learning to write and realizing every time I did a low residency program. So I went for a week to very all day, very extensive classes. And then from there, you would have 6 months with your mentor, turning back pages and your critique group and getting notes back. And every time I learned something new, I was like, oh, I'm starting over. I better rewrite this whole thing.
Yeah.
So I was doing that. It ended up doing really well after I graduated. I got it published and wrote 9 books in it. And somewhere around, I think it's book 7, maybe, or I had an idea for a character that had been kind of in the back of my mind about a girl exorcist who was a demonologist. And so I put her into that book just because I couldn't get her to shut up in my head. And I was like, I have this series that I need to finish. I've got 3 more books to write in this series. So So I put her in, and she appeared again in the last book in the series. And I was like, you know what? I'm just going to go ahead and give you your own series. So that's that'll be Invocation. And it's about a girl who's kind of like an exorcist who sees the spiritual realm and can kind of act in it, and messes with demons, and there's portals to hell and all kinds of crazy stuff.
all kinds of imaginative stuff. Yeah, I love that. I love that. Jack Carr, who wrote the Terminal List series, he's got one of my favorite quotes. He says, "You can plan all you want, but at a certain point you have to execute." So what does execution look like for you? How did you, what does your writing process look like?
Messy, I would say. So I start out with like an idea for a character. I'm like, what is like intriguing me right now? What kind of things do I like? A lot of people say like write what you know, and I think it's write what you love or what you're interested in, because then your passion will come through in your writing, which I think is pretty important. Because if you're not passionate about it, nobody that's going to read it is going to be passionate about it, you know?
I think that's one of my problems with the like right to market idea. Is that I think readers can understand, like they can tell if you're not passionate about this, if you're writing to make a quick buck. It comes off as false.
Yeah, and it comes through in like the writing. You're not like people that really care about like what they're writing. You can see it in the words and the descriptions and like how authentic it feels for the genre and the genre rules that they're following, you know, or not following, which can always be kind of a fun twist. I like to do like 80% or 70% of what the rest of the genre is kind of doing, the conventions that they've set up for the rules of the genre, and then the rest of it is your own kind of take.
Right.
Because you want your readers to be happy with it, but you also don't want to be the same as everybody else. You know? Like
respectfully subvert expectations. You know, I think you can bring in surprise as opposed to like disdain or.
Right.
You know.
Yeah. Yeah. But you have to keep some of it the same. Otherwise you get that disdain, you know? So yeah, I start out with like an idea for a character, the genre that I want to work with, that I'm loving reading and wanting to like explore, because I bounce around a little bit in genre. And then I love Save the Cat, which is a screenwriting book. They just did a novel version. I haven't read the novel version. And so I do the beat sheet, which is just 13 points that does like a basic structure for a book. And then I do 40 note cards to kind of flush it out. And then I just start writing, and I never look at those cards again, ever. I'm like, nope, that's done. Because it's just in my head. It's just kind of like an exercise to like make sure I know the start point, end point, and like kind of where I'm, you know, little dots. So I'm like,
I regularly, to people who tell me like, oh, I want to write a book, or I have an idea for a book, I regularly give away copies of Jessica Brody's Save the Cat Writes a Novel.
Yeah.
I say like, follow this process, and product will be pulled out of you.
It's very streamlined and very like, this is the structure of a story. Every story that's pretty much successful, I mean, I'm sure there's an exception to every rule, but follows this like set out structure. And if you can at least just do that, you know, and then you can play around with it later, but do that, then you're pretty golden. And it kind of does it, lay it out really in a digestible way. So it's not so hard. And I think people like look at a novel and like, how did you do that? It's so many pages. They're like, well, you do it like a little kind of little bit at a time, you know?
Bird by bird. Yeah.
So, and then I just write, but I have a developmental editor that I love, and I send her like my rough drafts as I'm going. So I'm like sending her stuff. I guess usually editors would want a full manuscript and would send that, but I'm so messy with my writing. Just like, I want to kind of keep going. I can't go backwards. Some writers go like, I'm going to write this scene because I like this scene and I want to write that scene. And then they write the in-between stuff. I'm like, no, I have to go front to back, and I have to know that the first stuff is good. So I kind of like revise and like this the whole way through the
Those kind of writers are called quilters, and there's a special place in hell for them.
I had a friend that was like that, and I was like, I don't know what you're doing
Yeah.
right now. And she would
Can't do that.
write in Scrivener and then just move the chapters all
Yeah.
around. Like, I was like, what is happening here? I was like, I don't know what you just did, but it's like, it's making me anxious. So, but it worked for her. So, you
Yeah.
know, all good. But I like write from start to finish. So,
Yeah.
and I like, if I feel like there's a problem over here and I want to look at that, I can't move on unless I have somebody actually looking at that part. So
Gotcha.
it's like a weird quirk. So I'm lucky to have a developmental editor that will roll with that. And like, you know, so.
You had mentioned, Buffy, some of the stuff I grew up with as well.
Yeah.
I grew up with a steady diet of Stephen King and R.L. Stine.
Mm-hmm.
Who were some of your literary influences and how they impacted your writing style?
So I really liked Anne Bishop she kind of was very influential for me. She wrote this series called the Dark Jewel series. She wrote just 3 books for a while, and she's recently started to expand it again. And I think now there's like 10 books in it. But at first it was just a trilogy. And I read it in high school. And I found it fascinating because she was the one that kind of, I'd read fantasy before. I'd read, I think it was Michael Moorcock that did the Eternal Champion. I think that was that series.
Yeah, sure.
And I read a bunch of like sci-fi stuff and a bunch of like fantasy stuff. But hers was like so different, and the POV was so close, and the descriptions were so like crystal clear but short, you know? So I really loved that writing. That was the first time that I was like, wow, what is she doing? How is this?
Yeah.
So I've read that series, and I still will, if I'm like, I need like an old standard, I will still reread those first 3 books like over and over again. The paperbacks are like worn through on the spine. Yeah, I love her. So
That's awesome. That's awesome. Let me ask you this. I mean, you're starting writing. I know you went to Seton Hill for your MFA. Talking about writing that first draft, that first book like 10 times. What are some of the challenges that you've faced in writing? Because I mean, now you're a dozen or so books deep into your career. Like, so what are some of the challenges you faced then? How'd you attack them? And what are some of the challenges you face now even as a seasoned professional at this?
So back then it was just like learning how to write. And I think there's a little bit of, especially in new writers, that I kind of want to tell them to kind of take everything with like a grain of salt, but also like be open to all notes and all suggestions, because you can't be too precious with it, especially when you're learning and starting out. Some people get too attached to the words on the page. And so that was something that I never had a problem with. So I just like, because I come from a film editing background, so I'm used to getting notes. I'm like, oh yeah, that doesn't work. We can do this scene another way. Let's recut it, So yeah, I would just go every time and I would learn something new. Descriptions were really hard for me at first. How much, putting POV into the descriptions, because I write first person. Like, how do you do that with like word choice? And I wrote the whole book. And the other thing that really, I took a class that blew my mind. And it was really late in my MFA. And I was like, you couldn't have told me to do this sooner. And I looked at my critique partner who had been with me through the whole thing. And I looked at her and she was like, we wanted to flip a table. Like, you couldn't. So that was, it was called this lecture called, but from Tim Azaias. And he is like, I'm sure it's published. I think there's a book, that my school put out that has that in it, and it's called Don't Be a Bobblehead. So it's about like dialogue tags, and like at first you want to get rid of all the saids, right? And then people put in like, oh, and the dialogue, and so nodded, and so shook their head, and so smiled, and don't like, and then like a hand motion or like a shrug or like or sigh. So like I had taken out a lot of the saids and thrown in a bunch of the bobbleheads. And I was like, I'm going to have to go through the entire book again
Yeah.
Meanwhile, this is like the 8th time that I had already rewritten it. I was like, and I'm going to go through it again because I messed up again. So it's just like, but not being humble about it, because you're like, you're still learning. So you just kind of have to keep coming back to it. Like, okay, I learned something new. I'm going to fix it. And I think that's can be the hardest thing for some writers.
That's all right, though. I think it was Seneca who says, like, every capability is confirmed through corresponding action, right? So you get better at walking by walking, you get better at running by running. You get better at writing just by writing. I mean, there's no, there are no shortcuts. There are no, like, I see all the time, ads on Facebook or Instagram for, like, learn to write a novel in 30 days. Like, it's bull, it's BS.
No,
you can only do it
just
garbage.
By doing it. Just by doing it. And every time you write a book, you learn something new. And I think I was on like my 9th book when I realized that I didn't necessarily need to do all of the note cards. And I didn't necessarily, because I really felt that, that 10,000 hours thing where I hit the 10,000 hours and I was like, oh, I don't need any of that. And I was like, I kind of felt like I kicked into a new gear. And so now it's much easier. Like I don't need to do all the prep.
Yeah, I still do the note cards. I feel like it's like getting the wheels turning, right? You know, like kicking into gear, and then like it's part of that process, that mindset of like I'm getting to work, and this is the first step of this work.
Yeah, I do. I still do. I have made my own like little worksheet with the 13 note cards, and I do that one. And then I'm like, I kind of know where I'm going, and I've done it like once since then, and it's just because I like hit a problem. I was like, wait, the characters didn't do what I thought they were going to do. So that happens sometimes. It sounds psychotic, but they they'll surprise you. Yeah. They kind of become their own thing. And then I had to go back and be like, all right, so what I thought was going to happen didn't happen. So like, let's go and work this out. What's going to happen now? So yeah. And like that writing is like is a process. So I'm always learning. I'm always wanting to learn more and do better. So I think the problems that I have now are more about time because, having a kiddo and like I live out in the country, taking her into the city to go to school and stuff, like it's time intensive. So then just squeezing everything in, I'm always like, I need more time. So now I've got time management.
I've got a 3-year-old who I'm expecting to bang through this door at any moment.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. I've been there. Yeah. And you're just like, I just need like a few more minutes. So even now she's at school, but in order to get a parking spot in her school, I have to leave here at like 1:50. And I'm like, my day is short. So then how do you do all of the balancing of like social media and email and the business of being an indie author and then also being creative? So those are my, my struggle points now. It's changed. There's always something, but it changed.
Well, I have found I'm waking up earlier and earlier. Mm-hmm. I was just having the conversation with my wife, Jennifer. It's like, because Ellie, my daughter is she's a early riser. I mean, she's up at 6:30 in the morning, just ready to play, ready to go. And I was telling Jennifer, like, man, I've got to start waking up at 5 a.m. if I want to get my writing and my journaling and reading and all this, like everything that the newsletter for this podcast, all that stuff. Like, I'm gonna have to start getting up at 5 o'clock in the morning.
Yep. It's crazy when you make that realization. I do that as well. And it blew my mind when it's like, I don't have enough hours. I'm going to have to wake up earlier. Yeah. And I'm not a morning person at all. I am like my genius writing time where I'm like, I get the most done. I'm flowing. It's 3 p.m.
I can't do the afternoons. I'm a totally different writer at 3 p.m. than I am at 5 a.m. Yeah. And so like I am most productive first thing in the morning.
See, it's so different for everyone. I'm like the slowest. I'm like, what am I doing? And I'm like, I'm trying to teach myself every year. I'm like, I'm going to do better in the morning. But now I do like emails, I do business work, I do stuff that I don't need to be creative. And then like in the afternoon, once I hit like lunchtime, I'm like, okay, this is writing. And now I'm just like, I wish I had just like 3 more hours a day. So yeah, it's very inconvenient with a child and having all your creative energy for the afternoon. So,
before I let you go, what's the message or takeaway that you hope readers get from Invocation when it releases?
I hope they have a fun journey, and I want them to feel hope and perseverance. I kind of throw a lot at my characters and make it really, really hard so that because life is hard, and I want to give that escapism, but also show the perseverance as my characters go through hardship, that if she can do this, then you can overcome whatever you're facing during the day. And I want to kind of show them a little bit of fun, escapism, and hope, hopefully, if that's
I love that.
Possible.
Aileen, where can our viewers and listeners find you?
You can find me mostly on Instagram. I'm addicted to the feed. So if you ever want to message me, Instagram's the best way. I'm Aileen Erin on Instagram, and then AileenErin.com for my website. So yeah.
Fantastic. And when Invocation comes out, it'll be available wide?
Yes, everywhere. Yeah.
Cool. One more question before I let you go. It's always this one. And I saw this happen to you at the Lubbock Book Festival. Someone's going to come up to you with a well-worn copy of one of the Alpha Girls books or a new copy of Invocation. And they're going to say, oh my God, you are my favorite author. And I have stories to tell. I want to write a book. What's the number one piece of advice you would give me? So Aileen Erin, what is the number one piece of advice you would give to that aspiring author?
I would say to write every day, to not stop no matter what, and to find a trustworthy person that can give you feedback, so that every day you send them their work and you can get some feedback, or once a week or whatever. But being able to write and also get feedback is the kind of the basis. Yeah. You need that to grow. So writing and then growing. So
Nicola Harrison, who was on the show a few weeks ago, called it her tribe. Got to find your writing tribe.
Yep. Yeah. They're worth their weight in gold, I swear. Because you can't write well without somebody telling you, hey, what you think in here, it's not making it on the page.
Yeah. Well, Aileen, thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you.
And we'll see you again soon. And hopefully I'll have you on again in the spring when Invocation comes out. I'd like to talk with you again once that happens.
I'd love it.
All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
That's our interview for today. Thank you for tuning in, and remember to subscribe for more insights and wisdom for your writing journey at the Indie Author Method. Find us online at my website, www.andrewjbrandt.com.
I wanna dig my hands deep down in the dirt, take a walk along the street if I'm feeling deserted.